Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The heavy oak door slammed shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the cavernous chamber, sealing Valerius inside with the monster. He didn't breathe. He couldn't. Valerius stood frozen against the cold stone of the archway, his fingers trembling so violently that the intricate lace of his wedding veil vibrated against his skin. Across the room, illuminated only by the dying embers of a massive hearth, stood Duke Cassian Blackwood, the tyrant of the North, the alpha whose very name was used to frighten children into obedience. Cassian was unbuttoning his ceremonial military jacket, his back to Valerius, broad shoulders shifting like tectonic plates under the stiff fabric. Every movement radiated a predatory lethality. Valerius clutched the porcelain half-mask that covered the right side of his face, the side that was no longer human, the side that had turned his own family into his executioners. He wasn't afraid of dying tonight. He had died 2 years ago in a locked room reeking of oil and envy. He was afraid that this predator would peel away the porcelain and look at him with the same revulsion his parents had shown when they sold him like damaged cattle. Cassian turned. The firelight caught the sharp, brutal angles of his face and the gold insignia on his collar. His eyes were not human. They were the color of molten gold, vertical pupils blown wide in the dim light. An alpha in his prime, territorial and dangerous. "You smell like terror," Cassian said. His voice was a low rumble that vibrated in Valerius's chest, bypassing his ears entirely to strike at his Omega instincts. "And you smell like ash." Valerius flinched, stepping back until his spine hit the door. "My lord," he whispered, his voice cracked from hours of silent weeping during the carriage ride. I ask only for a quick end. If you find me displeasing, please, do not drag it out." Cassian paused, his hands stilling on the cuffs of his shirt. He tilted his head, a wolf assessing a wounded rabbit. He took a step forward. Valerius squeezed his eyes shut. "Displeasing," Cassian repeated, the word tasting strange in his mouth. He crossed the room. It wasn't a walk, it was a stalk, silent and swift. Valerius gasped as a large, calloused hand gripped his chin. He expected pain. He expected to be thrown across the room. Instead, the grip was firm, grounding. "Open your eyes, Valerius." Valerius obeyed. The alpha loomed over him, stealing the air from the room. Cassian's gaze wasn't on Valerius's trembling lips or his wide, watery blue eye. It was fixed on the white porcelain mask strapped to the right side of his face. "Take it off," Cassian commanded. It wasn't a request. "No," Valerius choked out, panic rising like bile. "Please. It is hideous. It will offend you." "I determine what offends me," Cassian growled, his thumb brushing the edge of the mask. "Your parents sent me a letter with the contract. They called you ruined goods. They offered a discount on the dowry because of your defect." The shame burned hotter than the fire that had taken his face. Valerius tried to pull away, but the alpha's grip was absolute. "They did this to you?" Cassian asked, his voice dropping an octave, becoming something darker, something that promised violence. "Not them," Valerius whispered, the truth spilling out before he could stop it. "My brothers. The 4 of them. They didn't like that I was to inherit the estate. They said an Omega had no business leading the family. It was an accident, they said. A lantern fell." "A lantern," Cassian scoffed, a dark amusement dancing in his eyes. "Does a lantern melt skin to the bone, Valerius? Does a lantern leave the scent of alchemical accelerant on your skin years later?" Valerius went still. "How did you know?" "I am a soldier. I know the smell of arson." Cassian's fingers moved to the straps behind Valerius's head. "Take it off." Valerius stopped fighting. His spirit, broken long ago, had no fight left. He let his hands fall to his sides. "Let him see," he thought bitterly. "Let him see the monster, and then let him kill me." Cassian undid the clasp. The porcelain mask fell away, shattering on the stone floor. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Valerius stared at Cassian's boots, waiting for the recoil, the gasp of disgust. The right side of his face was a landscape of twisted, shiny scar tissue. The fire had taken his right eyebrow, warped the shape of his eye, and trailed down his cheek in a jagged, angry map of pain that disappeared into his collar. It was the mark of a beast. Cassian didn't recoil. He leaned closer. Warm, rough fingertips traced the edge of the scar near Valerius's temple. Valerius shuddered, a soft whimper escaping his throat. No one had touched him there in 2 years. Not without gloves. Not without medical tools. It looks like a lightning strike, Cassian murmured, his voice devoid of pity, filled instead with a strange reverence. Or a river of magma, hardening into stone. He tilted Valerius's head up. The Alpha's golden eyes were blazing, but not with disgust. They were burning with possession. You survived, Cassian stated. 4 Alphas tried to burn you out of existence, and you survived. You are stronger than all of them combined. I am ugly, Valerius whispered, tears finally spilling over the ruined skin. Cassian leaned down, his lips brushing the very center of the scar on Valerius's cheek. The kiss was shocking, electric. Valerius gasped, his knees buckling, but Cassian's arms swept around his waist, holding him up against the hard wall of his chest. You are my husband, Cassian growled against his skin. And anyone who thought they could destroy what belongs to me will learn why they call me the Tyrant. Life in the Iron Citadel was not the prison sentence Valerius had expected. The servants did not avert their eyes. The halls were not filled with screams, but with the quiet, efficient bustle of a military stronghold. And Duke Cassian was a contradiction that Valerius couldn't solve. To the outside world, he was a monster. Valerius saw him execute a spy in the courtyard 3 days after the wedding. A swift, brutal beheading that Cassian performed himself, his face an impassive mask of duty. But inside the private chambers, Cassian was different. He was possessive, yes. Intense, overwhelmingly so. But he refused to let Valerius wear the mask. It hides your peripheral vision. Cassian had argued logically when Valerius tried to put it on before dinner. Strategic disadvantage. If an assassin comes from the right, you're dead. Who would assassinate me? Valerius had asked. I am the discarded son. You are the Duchess of the North, Cassian corrected, pouring wine into Valerius's goblet. You are the most valuable person in this kingdom because you carry my name. And because... He paused, his eyes darkening as they lingered on Valerius's mouth. Because I find you pleasing. The slow burn of their relationship was agonizing and intoxicating. Valerius, starved of affection for so long, found himself leaning into Cassian's touch like a flower seeking the sun. The Alpha's scent, cedar, blood, and cold rain, became the only thing that calmed his nightmares. But peace is a fragile thing for the wicked. 3 months into their marriage, the invitation arrived. The Royal Winter Solstice Ball, a mandatory summons for all high nobility. Valerius held the heavy card, his hands shaking. I cannot go. Cassian looked up from his tactical maps. He was sitting by the fire, sharpening a dagger with a rhythmic shchenke sound. Why? My family will be there, Valerius whispered. My brothers. My parents. They will laugh. They will tell everyone I am a monster underneath the veil. They thrive on my humiliation, Cassian. It feeds them. Cassian stood up. He walked over to Valerius and took the invitation, tossing it into the fire. The paper curled and blackened, turning to ash in seconds. Let them feed, Cassian said softly. Whatever they try to eat will choke them. You don't understand, Valerius pleaded, gripping Cassian's sleeve. They are 4 strong alphas. They are charming. Society loves them. They spun the story that I was mentally unstable, that I set the fire myself. No one will believe me. Cassian cupped Valerius's face, his thumb rubbing over the scar tissue. I do not require them to believe you, little wolf. I require them to fear me. The royal ballroom was a kaleidoscope of silk, jewels, and hypocrisy. The air was thick with the cloying scents of perfumes trying to mask the underlying pheromones of lust and ambition. Valerius walked beside Cassian, his hand gripping the Duke's forearm, so tight his knuckles were white. He wore a high-collared suit of midnight blue velvet, silver thread embroidered in patterns that mimicked the scars he bore. Cassian had insisted on it. Do not hide it, he had said. Adorn it. But Valerius still wore a sheer silver veil. He wasn't ready. Not here. Not in front of them. The moment they entered, the room went quiet. The tyrant had arrived. Cassian wore his full military regalia, a black wolf fur cloak draped over one shoulder, metals gleaming on his chest. He looked like a god of war descended to judge the mortals. And then, the sharks began to circle. Valerius. The voice was jovial, loud, and sickeningly familiar. Valerius flinched. Emerging from the crowd were 4 men. Tall, golden-haired, beautiful in the way poisonous flowers are beautiful. His brothers. Roderick, Silas, Julian, and Marcus. Behind them stood his parents, looking distinctively uncomfortable but putting on a mask of parental concern. "We didn't think you'd show your face," Roderick, the eldest, laughed, holding a glass of champagne. "Or, well, what's left of it?" The surrounding nobles tittered nervously, unsure if they were allowed to laugh. Cassian did not stop walking, dragging Valerius with him, forcing the brothers to part like water or be trampled. But Roderick, emboldened by wine and the safety of the king's court, stepped into their path. "Duke Thorn," Roderick said with a mocking bow, "my condolences. We tried to warn you that our dear brother was difficult and unsightly. I hope he hasn't been too much of a burden on your aesthetic sensibilities." Cassian stopped. The air in the ballroom seemed to drop 10 degrees. The musicians faltered and stopped playing. "Roderick, was it?" Cassian asked, his voice deceptively mild. "Yes, my lord. You are the heir to the Vane estate." "I am. And you?" Cassian looked at the other 3. "You are the spares." Julian bristled. "We are alphas of the Vane bloodline." "I smell no alpha blood here." Cassian sniffed the air, his nose wrinkling. "I smell only kerosene and cowardice." The room gasped. Roderick's face flushed red. "How dare you? We are trying to be civil. We are family. We know Valerius best. We know he's a manipulative little snake who burned himself for attention." He reached out, his hand snatching at the silver veil covering Valerius's face. "Stop hiding, Val. Show everyone the freak show." It happened in a blur of motion. Roderick's fingers grazed the silk. Valerius squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the exposure, the laughter. Crack! A scream tore through the ballroom, a sound so high and jagged it shattered champagne flutes on nearby trays. Valerius opened his eyes. Roderick was on his knees. Cassian stood over him, holding Roderick's wrist at an angle that nature never intended. The bone had snapped clean through, jutting against the skin. "Roderick!" the mother screamed, rushing forward, but Cassian's low growl froze her in place. It was a true alpha command, heavy with such dominance that half the room fell to their knees instinctively. Cassian didn't look at the screaming man. He looked at Valerius. "Did he touch you?" Cassian asked calmly. Valerius stared, wide-eyed. "No." Cassian released the broken wrist. Roderick collapsed, sobbing into the marble floor. The other 3 brothers stepped forward, growling, their alpha instincts triggered. "You broke his arm," Silas shouted, drawing a ceremonial sword. "You monster!" Cassian laughed. It was a terrifying, hollow sound. "You wish to speak of monsters?" He turned to the crowd, his voice projecting to every corner of the silent hall. 2 years ago, 4 men entered a 14-year-old boy's room while he slept. They poured alchemical fire on his pillow and locked the door. They listened to him scream. They did not open the door. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The parents of the Vane family turned pale. "Lies," the father shouted. "Valerius is a liar. I have the apothecary who sold you the accelerant in my dungeons," Cassian said, his voice cutting through the protest like a blade. He sang quite a pretty song about a bribe from the Vane heir. Cassian turned back to Valerius. With gentle hands, contradicting the violence he had just inflicted, he reached for the silver veil. "May I?" he asked. Valerius looked at his brothers, 1 broken, 3 terrified. He looked at his parents, cowering under the glares of the court. Then he looked at Cassian, the tyrant who had burned the world to make a safe space for him. Valerius nodded. Cassian pulled the veil away. Valerius stood tall. He didn't look down. He let the chandeliers illuminate the twisted, shiny scar tissue. He let them see the missing eyebrow, the warped skin. But no one was looking at the scar with disgust. They were looking at the hand resting lovingly against it. Cassian's fingers traced the line of the burn, claiming it. "This face," Cassian announced, "is the face of the Duchess of Thorn. Every scar is a medal of victory against the vermin who tried to kill him." He turned his golden gaze back to the 3 standing brothers. "You burned him to take his inheritance, Cashin said, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried the weight of a death sentence. So I have taken the liberty of purchasing your family's debt from the crown. As of this morning, the Vane estate belongs to me. He smiled, baring sharp teeth. And I am gifting it to my husband, along with the power to evict or execute trespassers. Valerius looked at his brothers. The realization washed over them. They were destitute, homeless, powerless. Valerius, please, his mother wept, reaching out. We are family. Valerius looked at the woman who had sold him. He felt nothing. The fear was gone. The shame was gone, burned away by the heat of the alpha beside him. My family, Valerius said, his voice clear and steady for the first time in years, is standing right here. He placed his hand over Cashin's heart. Cashin covered Valerius's hand with his own. Get them out of my sight, he ordered the guards. Before I decide to finish what the fire started. As the guards dragged the screaming, pleading Vane family out of the ballroom, the music slowly resumed. But the court kept its distance, watching with a mix of terror and awe. Cashin turned Valerius toward him, placing a hand on his waist. Dance with me, Cashin said. Everyone is staring, Valerius whispered, feeling the heat rise in his unblemished cheek. Let them stare, Cashin murmured, pulling him close, their bodies pressing together in a way that promised a very long, very sleepless night once they returned to the citadel. Let them see that the dragon has found his treasure. And woe to anyone who tries to touch it again. And that is how the tyrant tamed the world, so his scarred wolf could finally run free. If you enjoyed seeing Valerius take his power back and Cashin destroy the brothers, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you have evicted the family, or would you have chosen a darker revenge? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, Man 1. Duke Cashin, tall, broad shoulders, military uniform with gold accents, sharp jawline, glowing golden eyes, intense protective expression, dark hair, dominant pose. Man 2. Valerius, slimmer build, wearing midnight blue velvet suit with silver embroidery. Beautiful, but with detailed burn scars on right side of face, looking up at Man 1 with trust and adoration. Unmasked. Background is a grand royal ballroom with crystal chandeliers, blurred crowd of nobles in shock, cinematic dramatic lighting, emotional atmosphere, intricate details, sharp focus.